I never planned to get even with my neighbor. I just wanted to help his wife. But when he turned the police against me with a lie, I turned his life into a quiet, living hell. Bamboo doesn't make a sound when it grows, but it never stops. This is how it all unfolded. Before you hear my story, before you judge my silence or my revenge, do one thing for me. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and tell me, have you ever had to take justice into your own hands when no one else would? Because what you're about to hear isn't just revenge. It's what happens when quiet people are pushed too far. My name is Gray Vale. I am a former military vet. I've fought wars across oceans, but the coldest battles I've seen were waged behind closed doors. This is one of those stories. I've spent a lifetime chasing truth, and when I stopped chasing, the stories found me instead. You never forget the sound of someone screaming in terror, especially when it comes from the other side of your own wall. It started slowly. Whispers. Slamming doors. Raised voices muffled by drywall and distance. I lived in a quiet neighborhood back then, detached houses with tiny backyards and white picket fences that pretended nothing ugly ever happened behind them. But the house next door? It was different. It pulsed with something dark. At first I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. That couples fight. That some people just have louder voices. I was in the military at the time, stationed locally, working odd shifts and trying to decompress between deployments. Noise? Background static. I could handle it. But the static became a pattern. And patterns reveal truth. One night I was sitting in my living room sipping warm coffee after a long shift, when I heard it, a crash sharp like glass. Then a scream. Hollow. Desperate. I dropped my mug. My training kicked in before my fear could. I bolted to the door, rushed outside, and stood frozen in my yard, staring at the house next door. The lights were on. Blinds closed. No signs of damage. But the silence that followed, that emptiness, was louder than the scream had been. That night I made my first call to the police. Nothing came of it. They knocked, spoke briefly with the husband, let's call him Derek, and left. The same old story. Domestic disagreement. All fine now. Thanks for looking out. But I knew better. I'd seen too many bruises, too many victims of accidents, to believe that line. Over the next few months the noise got worse. Arguments bled into midnight. Someone, was breaking. And one day I met her. Her name was Neve. It was early afternoon, and I'd just gotten home when I saw her sitting on my front step. She looked broken. Hair unbrushed. Clothes wrinkled. One shoe on. The other dangling from her fingers. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep from falling apart. I didn't say anything at first. I just handed her a bottle of water. She took it with shaking hands. That's when I noticed the bruise on her cheekbone. The jagged gash down her calf, barely scabbed over. And a fading handprint around her wrist. I don't know where else to go, she whispered. He's asleep. He gets like this after he loses it. I asked if she needed help. A hospital. Police. Anything. She shook her head violently. You don't understand. He's a mortician. He knows everyone. He buries their parents, their wives. He drinks with the cops. I clenched my jaw. I hated that kind of power. That smug arrogance of men who believed they were untouchable because of who they knew. That day I let her rest on my couch. Cleaned her wounds using supplies from my trauma bag. I trained as an EMT before the military, and I still kept gear at home for emergencies. That became the pattern. Every few weeks, Neve would show up at my door half broken, apologizing for the inconvenience. She never stayed long. Just long enough to feel human again. To breathe. To stop bleeding. I never pushed. Never judged. Just listened. Then one day, Derek found out. He showed up at my house, red-faced, fists clenched, barking accusations. You think you're a hero? Hiding my wife. She's mine. I stood my ground. I was armed, legally open carrying, and I didn't flinch. You ever lay a hand on her again, I said, you'll find out just how unbreakable she really is. Derek backed off. But not for long. Because when abusers lose control, they find other ways to reclaim it. A week later, I was sitting at my kitchen table, flipping through the mail, when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find a sheriff's deputy. Are you, Gray Vale? Yeah. What's this about? He handed me an envelope. Apparently, Derek had filed a report. Claimed I'd threatened him with my pistol. Claimed I'd waved it at him, tried to intimidate him, made him fear for his life. The story was total fiction, but terrifyingly well-timed. If the restraining order stood, it would force me to move. From my own home. I was stunned. Not furious yet, just confused. Shock is cold. It doesn't burn at first. It chills. But here's where the universe tilted in my favor. Derek had declared war. And I knew then with crystal precision that I wasn't just going to win. I was going to end him. The final straw came days later. I stepped out into my yard to toss the trash and Derek was there, standing by the fence, smug, sneering. "You think that's it?" he hissed. "You haven't seen what I can really do." I smiled. Because he had no idea what I could do. I don't think you ever forget the exact moment someone tries to rip your life out from under you. That neighbor, Derek, didn't just scream threats or throw around drunken slurs. No, he took the quiet route. The calculated one. He filed a false report. Said I'd threatened him. Claimed I pointed it at him over some petty neighbor dispute. It didn't even make sense. But the scary part? It didn't have to. Because that single accusation could have cost me everything. I had just finished my last round of service. My honorable discharge paperwork was still crisp in a folder on my desk. I was ready to head back east. Restart life. Maybe even breathe for once. And suddenly, with the sound of a doorbell, it felt like my entire world was about to be erased by one man's lie. The sheriff's deputy handed me the papers, calmly like he was dropping off mail. A restraining order. Not just a warning. This was going to force me to move out of my home, effective immediately. The house I was renting and planned to hand over properly. Gone. No trial, no real hearing yet, just a neighbor's word against mine. The deputy didn't say much. He looked almost tired, like he'd seen 100 of these cases and didn't care whether it was true or not. Just doing his job. But I wasn't about to let some abusive coward burn my life down on his way to hell. What Derek didn't know, and this would become his biggest mistake, was that I had sold that gun over a month ago. Not to some guy off Craigslist. Not through a pawn shop. I sold it to a police officer. Legally. Registered. With full paperwork. And that officer? Was married to my sister's best friend. That connection, right there, is what saved me. As soon as the deputy left, I called him. Laid out everything. Not just the accusation but the entire story. Derek's abuse. The wife he threw through a coffee table. The nights she slept on my floor because she was too scared to go home. The bruises. The screams. The way she flinched when anyone raised their voice, even by accident. He listened. Silent the whole time. Then he said 6 words I'll never forget. "I've got it. Leave this to me." A few days later he showed up at Derek's door, not in uniform but with purpose. He had something in hand, a high-resolution photo of my old pistol, taken right before I sold it. It sat on a table, ruler beside it. Time-stamped. "Is this the weapon he pointed at you?" the officer asked. Derek barely blinked. "Yeah, that's the one. That's the gun." "And this happened last week, you said?" "Yep." The officer paused, pulled a slip from his back pocket. "Funny. Because this gun has been in my possession for over a month. And your name's about to go on a ticket for filing a false police report." That moment? Derek's eyes widened, just enough to show he'd realized the trap. That was the crack. The fracture in Derek's carefully crafted lies. That same day, Derek got slapped with a ticket for making a false police report. The restraining order? Gone. Thrown out. Shredded. The satisfaction I felt in that moment wasn't anger. It wasn't even justice. It was clarity. The restraining order disappeared faster than it arrived. But that didn't satisfy me. No. He had accused me of a felony. Had tried to ruin my career. My record. My life. And for what? Because I dared to give his wife Neve a place to stay when she was bleeding? He wasn't done making threats either. The next time he saw me outside, he spat venom. "I've got friends in the department. You think this is over?" His eyes narrowed. "I'll ruin you." But the man didn't realize he wasn't just talking to a military vet. He was talking to someone who'd been trained in patience, who understood tactics, someone who could wait months, even years, for the right opportunity to strike. And when they did, it wouldn't be loud. It would be permanent. I waited. Let him think he'd won. I didn't react. I didn't call the cops again. I didn't confront him. That's the thing about guys like Derek. They feed off conflict. They expect the blowback to come right away. They think people like me act on rage. But I don't operate in rage. I operate in resolve. During that time I still looked out for Neve. Got her a bed in a local women's shelter. One that specialized in helping women who were afraid of the law not being on their side. The director there had experience with small-town politics, with men like Derek who thought they were untouchable because they embalmed half the people in town. She got counseling, legal aid, and for the first time since I met her, I saw her breathe. But I wasn't finished, because Derek still walked around like a king. Like the world owed him fealty. Like I was just another name he could erase from his records. So I planted the seed. Literally. Have you ever dealt with bamboo? Not the tiny houseplant kind. I'm talking about running bamboo. The stuff that spreads underground, sends out roots like fingers through the dirt and comes up anywhere it pleases. Concrete? Doesn't care. Foundations? Lost. Once it's in, it's war. I bought a healthy stalk. Cut it into 4-inch sections. Took a rubber mallet. And one moonless night, I walked into Derek's backyard. He had no cameras. No motion lights. I knew that because I'd spent months studying his routines. His arrogance made him lazy. That night, the ground was soft from rain. I pushed each bamboo segment into the soil, spacing them out just enough to make the damage unpredictable. The roots would tangle under his deck, curl around his plumbing, break through the seams of his fence. It would take months to see the results. But they'd come. Well, they'd come. By the time I left town, Derek had no idea what lay beneath his feet. I packed up, headed east, started fresh. But every now and then I get a call from someone who still lived nearby. A buddy who worked construction mentioned that Derek was asking around about invasive plant species. He says something's tearing up his yard. The guy laughed. Thinks it's from your side. Wants to sue you. I didn't reply. Didn't respond. There was nothing left tying me to that house. My lease was up. My name wasn't on any property documents. I was just a shadow. But I knew what he was dealing with. You can't kill running bamboo once it takes root. Not without tearing out the soil layer by layer. It grows fast. Sends shoots through pipes. Cracks patios. Wrecks plumbing systems. It's a slow green vengeance. Silent. Creeping. Just like the revenge he never saw coming. And in the end, I didn't need to raise a weapon. I didn't need to scream or shout. I just needed to plant something. Something he could never unearth. You'd be surprised how far away a whisper can travel. It had been nearly 2 years since I left that town. I had a new job, a quiet little rental near the coast, and for the first time in a long time, my sleep was undisturbed by shouting neighbors or midnight doorbell rings from angry cops. I hadn't thought much about Derek. Not actively. Occasionally, I'd drive past some wild patch of overgrowth near a property line and catch myself grinning. But mostly I moved on. Until I got the call. It was a buddy of mine, Mike, who used to work maintenance and minor contracting jobs around that neighborhood. He sounded out of breath like he'd run out of a movie theater to tell me something. Dude, he said, you will not believe what's going on at Derek's place. I leaned back in my chair half smiling. Let me guess. His lawns finally declared independence. He laughed. Worse. Way worse. His entire foundation is cracking. Bamboo's torn through his irrigation, busted his fence, and it's growing through his garage floor. Through the concrete. Just pushing up tiles, man. Looks like a horror film. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Just sat there, staring out the window at a world Derek would never control again. Mike continued. He spent thousands. Landscaping companies, pest guys, concrete crews. He even tried to sue the current tenant in your old place, claiming it was their bamboo. But the surveyor found it started under his property line. Poetic. I thanked Mike for the update and hung up. And for a long time I just sat there. Not grinning. Not gloating. Just satisfied. Because the truth is, revenge isn't always about the moment someone suffers. It's about the shift in power. The subtle, permanent correction of a world that had tilted unfairly for far too long. And Derek? He was finally living in a house as broken and chaotic as the life he created. I think about that bamboo sometimes. How it doesn't roar. Doesn't demand attention. It just is. Just grows. Slowly. Inescapably. That's how some lessons work. Derek wasn't a man who would ever be brought down by a courtroom or a punch to the jaw. He was too slippery, too well connected. He was rot disguised as routine. But even rot can't compete with roots. While he spent thousands fighting a battle he couldn't win, Neve found her life again. And I found peace, not because I destroyed him but because I never let him take anything more from me. People always think revenge is about fire, about destruction. But sometimes, it's about growth. About planting something deep and quiet, something that reminds those who hurt others. You can't escape what you've buried, because eventually it will grow back, and it will find you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to serve justice quietly? Or do you know someone who got exactly what they deserved, without ever seeing it coming? And if my journey meant something to you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me keep sharing these stories of strength and healing. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay sharp, stay kind, and never underestimate the quiet one.